Hey there, everyone. I hope you're having a fabulous day. It's November, and I've been talking about planting spring bulbs and planting other kinds of spring blooming flowers, which made me start thinking about how to protect those little spring blooming babies from slugs and snails when they start coming along. It's November, and it may be a super sunny day today, but last week we had our first fall rains. The days are definitely getting shorter and noticeably cooler as well. Much as we love this kind of weather and the first fall rains, slugs and snails love it just as much. So, got me thinking, what are we going to do about those slugs and snails? And here's the key. The best thing you can do about slugs and snails in your garden is to stay on top of population control. And that starts with monitoring, checking. Certain seasons, slugs and snails like them better than other seasons, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So there's definitely sometimes you don't have to be quite as vigilant as others, but they love cool weather. They love moist conditions. They love this fall and winter and early spring weather just as much as we do. So that's when you're really going to be focusing all your energy, well, maybe not all your energy, a lot of your energy on going out there and checking every single day for slug and snail activity. And as soon as you start seeing it, that's when you're going to start kicking in and taking care of the problem. So in my garden, hand picking is always the way I start. I get out there in the evening with a flashlight, or I get out there early in the morning before the sun gets up when it's still nice and cool and when slugs and snails are most active. So you get on out there and you hand pick them. They're a little slimy, they're a little icky, but you bring yourself a bucket, you get those slugs and snails in that bucket, and then you're going to be disposing of them. One thing you can do is get those compostable bags from the grocery aisle and get them all in there, and then you tie that in a knot and bury them in the compost pile. Or you can just toss it in your green waste bin and, the waste guys take it away for you. Another thing you can do is feed it to your ducks and chickens. They really, really love the slugs and snails. And another thing you can do if you're soft-hearted, you can drive them out to the countryside and release them to the wild and let them take their own chances. That's always fun. Gets you a drive in the countryside. The one thing you cannot do is lob them next door into your neighbor's yard. That is not a good thing to do. Brings you incredibly bad gardening karma. So avoid that at all costs. And then you can get traps if you want to. There are lovely slug and snail traps at the hardware store or the garden centers. Or you can make your own, which is what I really like to do. There's a lot of materials you already have around your home that you can make your own slug and snail traps. And I've got a couple of great recipes for you too. They guarantee that you're going to catch those slugs and snails. So follow along. Let's go figure this out, and I'll show you how to make the traps and what to put in them. Okay, so first simple trap, you're going to take a plastic bottle that looks like this one, or one of those milk cartons works really well too. Flip it over like that, and sometimes I'll cut the top just so it's a little more even. I should have measured it, but I did not. The idea being, you've got this nice little funnel. You're creating a little funnel for the slugs and snails to crawl into, and they're not able to get out. Can you see that right there? You're going to fill this up with beer and bury it. Here we go. Pick something inexpensive. Though I have heard it recommended that you get some kind of beer that you actually do like the taste of, drink half of it, and then bury that whole can in the garden. Not a bad idea. I don't know how much more successful that is, but this is really good. Can you see that? Those slugs and snails are going to crawl right in to that little beer-soaked pond down there, and that's where they're going to end their days. This, as you can see, is open at the top. So if it's about to get super rainy, super wet, and we're ending up, a week or two of rain, this is going to get filled with rainwater and the beer is going to get diluted and it's not going to be such an effective trap. So what I like to do in the rainier times is to get something like a cottage cheese container or a yogurt container, cut little holes right in there, fill it up with beer, and then you got the lid on that protects it from the rain. But you got one little bonus tip. What the slugs and snails are going after in that beer is the yeasty flavor, the yeasty scent. So you make your trap even more effective by getting some baker's yeast and sprinkling a little bit of that in there. This makes it even better and more attractive for the slugs and snails. They're going to be thrilled to bits and end up crawling through those little holes and ending their days in there. And I'll show you how deep to bury them just a second. There is another recipe though. If you're not a beer drinker and you never have beer around your house, you can make your own secret recipe, which is a tablespoon of yeast, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 3 cups of water. You mix that well, leave it for a couple of hours. It bubbles up ever so slightly as the yeast begins to multiply, and you use that instead of beer in your homemade traps. The main aim here is you want to bury whatever container you've decided is your trap. You want to bury it so that the holes that the slugs and snails are going to crawl through are just at surface level. You don't want to fill it up with dirt like it looks like I'm doing right here. But you see those little holes? Right there. That's where they're going to go. We'll check back on this trap in a couple of days and we'll see how successful we are. This one has to be just a little deeper. One more thing I wanted to say about this is you need to set traps every 3 feet or so, just to make sure you're really staying on top of population control. And then monitor those traps every day if you can, just to see how successful it is or if you might need to move them. But you see this is about a ½ inch above the soil level. Slugs and snails crawl right in and end up down there. Alrighty, we're gonna check. Oh my goodness, those beer traps really work. Once you've got a handle on your slug and snail population in your garden, you're gonna want to really keep an eye on things, especially if you've just planted sweet peas or any other newly planted garden bed. So you've gotten rid of most of the slugs and snails, at least the ones you know about. You got nice new little baby plants in there. You want to come up with a line of defense. Now there are products out there, but I always like to use homemade when I can. And who doesn't have eggshells around the house? Slugs and snails will not cross these sharp-edged eggshells. So what you want to do is make a nice little line of defense around your new baby plants. And those new slugs and snails coming from outside your control area are not going to want to cross it. Let me show you how. You're going to want to make it about 1 inch wide and as unattractive as possible, and make sure there's no real gaps going through, because believe me, those slugs and snails will find that gap and get in at your new baby plants. But stay up on the monitoring, stay up with the trapping, stay up with the barriers, and you should be in control. Crushed eggshells work really, really well as that defense line barrier that I just talked about. But maybe you don't eat eggs, maybe you don't have eggs in your house. You know what else works really well is wood ashes from your fireplace or from your fire pit, or diatomaceous earth. The tiny, tiny little scratchy surface area of those diatoms, slugs and snails won't cross that either. So there's another really good thing that you can do. Of course, there's always copper tape barriers, but that can be hard to find sometimes and can be quite expensive. So, as always, use the homemade remedies wherever possible. It makes you happy, you're reusing things. And when the eggshells or the wood ashes or the diatomaceous earth breaks down in your soil, it actually adds to the nutrients. So it's kind of what I like to do first. Let me talk about some of the other means of fighting slugs and snails that are out there and available commercially. Um, I tend to go towards organic at all times, but even some of the organic products that you can find out there in the world do have some negative things being said about them. Whether those are true or not, I don't really want to leave that up to chance. But if you just aren't going to make a homemade recipe or just can't for whatever reason, and you really can only use a commercial product, be as safe as you can with that product. You can use any of these homemade snail traps, the slug traps, to put that bait into so that nothing else gets in there, nothing else can access it. The earthworms are safe. Or you can put out terracotta saucers, sprinkle the bait on there, and then you know you're going to be safe. You're going to keep your garden safe and healthy. I would like to talk about slug and snail baits for half a second. We're talking about homemade remedies here more than anything, but should you be tempted to go out and get a bait from the hardware store or garden center, always go organic. Always go organic. You don't want to put anything inorganic into your garden, in my opinion. But even some of the organic remedies for slugs and snails have some worrisome concerns about them. So, just to be on the safe side, when you get an organic slug or snail bait, do something like put them in one of those homemade traps that I just talked about, or put it on a paper plate, or put it on a terracotta saucer, and have that bait be just for the slugs and snails. That way you're not going to harm anything else in your garden like the earthworms or beneficial bugs and insects. Okay, gardeners, I really hope that was helpful. Make sure you drop me a line if you have any great snail combating recipes that you'd like to share. Um, I do have one more trick up my sleeve, a fabulous spray that you spray in the evening, and it really works on slugs and snails, but that's for another video. So get out there. The weather's cooler now. We've had a little bit of rain. There's definitely a little bit of an uptick in slug and snail population numbers. So it's a great time to go out there and get them. Happy gardening!